Okay, we're recording. Okay.
So
down here.
Yeah.
Okay.
So on the table height, make sure that this plate isn't bent, because of course you can see this one goes up and hits the sensor, and that's what controls when your table gets up higher of how well it feeds and everything, and it stops it from going too far because it's hitting that sensor.
Yes.
And then these fingers here.
Yes.
Do not be lowering and raising them, leaving them where they're at. They're set at 2.5 millimeters.
Okay.
That's exactly where they should be, which is set by these screws here, which you really shouldn't adjust those. All you should adjust is the in and out of them, which is done with these two screws here. And of course on these here, that is basically for just if you got curled stock.
Yes.
So all they do is basically move in and out. If I have to do all.
Can you hold the light that way when... Yeah.
So this do-all here, you notice I put it here.
Yes.
This moves the finger in and out.
Yes.
So basically only for curled stock, otherwise you don't need it.
Okay.
Okay. And then if you're having trouble feeding paper and it's not separating the sheets good, most of the time you just keep these on 0 though. See, you notice they're moving in and out.
Yeah.
See that moving out and then back in. So just most of the time you'll be on 0, unless you have it grabbing the paper too much, then you'd want to push them in and you pull them out just a little bit more if it's not separating the paper good enough.
Okay.
Okay.
So be careful that this down here is not bent.
Right. So if it gets bent, and of course we just got taking the other one off, which you seen it had a bend in it.
Yes. Let's see if we.
Where'd you put it? Oh, right here.
Okay.
As you can notice, the different angle of it now. See, you see where it's been bent.
Yes. And that little piece is worth about $55 Canadian.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
So you can see where it's been. I've bent it back, and it's, you know, you could probably get by. But this one, of course, will react a lot better to the sensor.
Yes.
It's formed the right direction.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Of course, on those fingers, you know, these here is what controls the height of those fingers. And those going down or going up right now, they go back down. Just in case you would need those for trouble stock is basically what you're after.
Okay.
Okay.
And you say that these, the suckers virtually never wear out?
I haven't really seen none wear out at all.
But on the other hand, for envelopes, you were recommending a bellows sucker?
Yeah, a bellows sucker, a 10310 sucker feet.
A 10310 sucker feet.
Yeah.
From where?
Standard Dynamics out of Bloomington, Minnesota.
Standard Dynamics out of Bloomington, Minnesota.
Yeah.
And they just slip right over top of these?
Right.
Okay.
Yes, and of course, and you know, your first thing is, notice on this plate, usually you clean the sensor. Yes. And of course you got a sensor down below. I mean, if you're having a lot of feed problems, you move the feed rollers to the side. Which, just loosen them here. Slide them all the way over. Of course, make sure your sucker bar is out of the way so you're not hitting your sucker feet.
Okay.
Turn these out.
And take that plate right out.
Yes. That way you can get to the bottom sensor. Plate and the bottom sensor.
Okay.
And that way any kind of sticky, you know, something fell down in there, you can clean it up and clean the plate. So that's one of the things you check right away.
Okay.
And when you're slipping this in, you got to notice how you kind of slip it down and it slides in. And you can't lift the front end of it up. It is stuck down because it goes underneath the little lips like an L bracket.
Okay.
You stick your thumb screws back in. So when the paper is going in. For instance, you're doing a double sheet detect. The paper goes in, comes back out, and goes back in.
Yes.
Okay. So if the paper goes in and then comes back out and the machine stops, then most of the time what is happening is the sensor is not seeing the other sensor. So in that case, you make sure that this is in there square. All the way square with the spring snapped.
Okay.
And if you just done it and it's happening, you know that most likely you don't got the plate right. You see the plate move there?
Okay.
So you would move the plate, tighten it down, and do another double sheet detect. And then the paper should go in, come back out, and go back in, and then you set your double sheeter. So, you know, make sure on these when you're sliding them in that they click in each line, so they don't.
Right.
You don't want to break off the sucker feet when you roll up the press.
Right.
And it's always good to inch the press and roll them right by it to make sure they make it, which I can't quite inch right now.
Right.
So, and you know your brushes there. If you have paper hanging back, make sure you take the brushes and you would push them. You know, if the paper was getting a lot of late sheets,
Yes.
then you would back the brushes off.
Okay.
Okay. What you're doing is trying to get a good even feed. So if you're looking from sheet to sheet,
Yes.
and you see basically, say you're running greens, and you see a dark green, a light green, a dark green, a light green, and they're all just consecutive sheets. The shades of green are changing from sheet to sheet.
Okay.
Yeah. So if the shade is a color is changing from sheet to sheet,
Yes.
then most of the time it's because their brushes aren't adjusted right.
But I'm still confused. That would only be it still hits in perfect register, so why would the shade change from sheet to sheet?
Because it's not hitting a perfect register. That is the point. It's really not, and that's what the brushes do. They keep it hitting more of a better register.
Like it keeps them at the same position, but
Right. It keeps the sheet flat. It wouldn't let the sheet get of a bow, so it gives a little bit of a cock, and it's ever so slightly. You can't see it in the line. It's so slightly that it changes the color of the sheet.
would it make regular print bold? I was just having someone saying they were having something like that happen.
They was having what now?
Print would look normal on one sheet, but it would look bold on another sheet. I think was the problem.
So if it's looking bold, it is doubling.
Doubling.
So it's doubling is what it's doing, and usually it does not make doubling. Doubling is usually from.
And what do you mean by doubling?
Doubling is when basically you're saying bold, the type gets wider.
Yes.
That's doubling.
Okay. Are you saying two sheets are going through at the same time? No.
The grippers does not grab the sheet properly, so the grippers need to be redone.
Okay, the grippers need redone?
Yeah.
It's not this.
Most likely not. Most likely all you really see from the brushes
Yes.
is, as I said, color fluctuation.
Color fluctuation.
Yes.
But if it's bold print,
Then you're talking about the grippers need readjusted, or the grippers are wore out, or you know.
okay.
You'd have to go through the press to find out for sure.
Okay. And you can see we also have little LED lights on the side glued there to make it easier to see everything in here.
Yupper. Just hope it don't blind out the sensor.
Yeah, make sure it's not cutting out any sensors. Easy to tell just by
shutting them off.
So far it seems not to create a problem.
Yep.
Makes it a little easier to make adjustments in there.
So there's your plate. What, you had someone else running a DI that's having that doubling problem?
Someone was telling me they were having that trouble. Yes.
On a DI?
Yes.
Yeah.
They thought it might be, or there was some things mentioned that it might be the heat or the cold of the ink, like setting the chiller temperature?
Most likely not. They're saying bold, but if they would get out their glass and look at their glass, they'll probably notice it's deafened. That's what it's doing.
Two prints in the same spot.
Yeah. That's why it's making it bolder, as you say bolder, but it's just wider because it's deafened and the sheet's not going
so
through
it's moving in the gripper.
Right. Most of the time it's moving the gripper. It could just be a loose blanket.
Okay. That was something I had thought of, was a loose blanket.
Right.
But I had never thought to mention it just now.
Right. Okay. Yeah. A loose blanket would do it, and of course, most of the time it is grippers. So.
Okay.
And, you know, the problem is, especially if you got over 5 million on the press, and it's never had a gripper job, it's probably needs a gripper job.
So about every 5 million, think of a gripper job. Or unless, of course, one has lets an envelope go through backwards. Like
then we take out a lot of grippers and maybe some gripper springs and maybe even gripper bars, you know.
Yeah, if you forget to make sure that the press has got no
sheets
in it when it starts to make a plate.
Right.
Yeah. So always make sure of that. Even paper wouldn't be good, but an envelope would be worse.
Yeah. Yeah. I would like to see that, though, you know. No, I can come fix your press that weekend.
Thanks. Well, that's the end of adjusting the... Oh, I'm going to ask you about adjusting the feeder, though. When we run an 8.5/11 sideways,
yes,
we were having issues just with speed and stuff. Any suggestions or...
Okay, is it running long grain or short grain?
Short grain, because it's running an 8.5/11 sideways.
So here's your problem.
Right, but
so what you got to do is you'd have to
run it slower.
Run it slower, which you're going to have a hard time doing. So what you need to do is just get paper that's not pre-cut and cut it for the grain as you're in the right direction for you.
Okay, by 11/17 paper, because that's long grain, and then cut it in half and run it the short grain.
Yep.
Okay, we did run it, but
not run it short grain. You said it was short grain, right?
Yes, because we were running
long grain
across.
paper, but you turn it around and you tried to run it short grain.
Right.
Right, which won't work.
Well, we did it.
Yeah, you had to run awful slow, and it's probably really inconsistent on the feeding.
A little bit more inconsistent. It wasn't. I used the two angled side pieces, which sort of seemed to hold it in position, and
right.
And I think some side air.
If you would check registration, you'd see that the registration is bouncing a lot.
Okay. Didn't matter in this particular case.
Right.
As long as it got through.
But you would see that the registration is bouncing a lot.
Okay. But the solution is short grain. Or yeah, run long grain paper.
Long grain paper, and when you go to cardstock, then you of course got to run
short grain cardstock.
Right, because it's going around the cylinders. How much of a bend it's got.
Right.
That's why it's good to run envelopes on these decks.
Right.
Because the paper goes right straight through.
Right, and this Heidelberg. Mind you, on the AB deck you get a heavy coverage and you have problems stripping it off the blanket, but on the DI, because it's pulling it off at an angle, it probably pulls it off easy.
Yeah, well, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, plus the grippers are a lot different kind of grippers.
Yeah, stronger.
A lot stronger grippers.
1 centimeter instead of 1/4 inch.
I can straighten them up on your AB deck and make them pull them off. That pull the solid off there too.
Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. How? Or you got to do it.
Yeah. Well, a lot of times you can just double grip them. You put a double gripper on there.
A double gripper. I'm looking here at the grippers.
Yeah, but see, you set them. Yeah, I'm talking about, because what it's not pulling them off, it's pulling them off the blanket. It's pulling them off the blanket because it's transferring.
Right.
But it's not pulling them off it's pulling them off the impression cylinder.
Right.
So you put another pad on top of it. So you basically right here. So you're looking at the gripper pad. See the gripper pad?
Yes.
Just put 2 of them on there.
Oh. Okay.
It gives you that much more strength, and then of course you'd have to turn the pressure down on some too.
Okay.
Or another trick too is to get some rough material
Yeah.
and put right at the edge.
What do you mean rough material?
Like something like emery cloth or something like that with a sticky back or
Okay.
something like that. I'm trying to think.
But that's going to wear something out
What do you
awful quick. Emery cloth is going to stick.
Well,
Stuck to
no. Well, what you're going to do? All you're doing is sticking it on there.
Yes. Oh, okay.
Just put in something in between them for it.
So it's
tighter.
got more tightness.
Yeah.
Okay. Now you know. Now I know.
Yeah, there you go.
So that's it for today.